One thing I must say is that America was a better country for both white and black people when we were living probably in the 50s or the 60s and 40s and 30s. It's a better country. The Supreme Court has decided to take on Trump's argument against birthright citizenship. Now, this is very controversial because what many thought was this was settled law. So let's watch this first video and see how we are going to approach this conversation. Play the clip.
In a case of careful what you wish for, the Supreme Court has just announced they're going to hear legal challenges to President Trump's birthright citizenship executive order. The background of this is literally the first day he took office, President Trump has issued an executive order saying, basically the 14th Amendment has been misinterpreted. And just because you're born on American soil doesn't mean you're an American citizen, according to the executive order. And instead, the language, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, has been misinterpreted, according to the executive order. And since then, there's been legal challenges to it. It's been, the whole order has been stayed this entire time. And now the US Supreme Court has said, we are going to hear this case. And that could be monumental. And I don't know that the people challenging this have thought through what this could mean. So the 14th Amendment says that anyone born in American soil and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a US citizen. Well, what does that mean? Well, we have different cases that have interpreted it. And the one that's pointed out to the most is the Wong Kim Ark case from Asian Americans from way back in the 1800s. And they point to that to say, look, that was the Supreme Court saying, yes, it applies to anyone born here. The problem is, in the Kim Ark case, the parents of that child were lawful permanent residents. They were not here illegally.
Pause it. Lawful permanent resident. That means the person came here legally. They have a green card and they're here legally. If you're not a lawful permanent resident, so this is the cases that they're looking at when they're interpreting. They're trying to interpret what the 14th Amendment means. So when you're looking at these type of cases and you're pointing to this stuff, that's usually how they make the decisions, by the way. The people who are in favor of birthright citizenship might be in trouble here because this clearly states that you would have to be a lawful permanent resident in order to have those rights.
Okay, yeah, that's the opinion of some dude on a video. We don't know that necessarily because if you want to use precedents, this current Supreme Court have violated precedents before with the Dobbs decision and others. So let's keep playing the video, see what else he's saying.
Illegally. And if you go further, you have another case that involved an American Indian who applied for citizenship and was denied because the court said, you're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, you're subject to the jurisdiction of your tribe. And if the argument that the 14th Amendment is clear and unambiguous and it means if you're born here, you're a citizen is true, well then why in 1924 did Congress have to pass the Indian Citizen Act of 1924? And the answer is obvious because, at least according to the Congress at that time, the 14th Amendment did not confer automatic citizenship upon you just because you're born here.
You see how in the United States, they had to actually come up with a law in 1924 to give the Indians the right of citizenship that applies to United States law. Prior to that, they were subject only to the jurisdiction of their tribes. So when people come in illegally, is it that they're only subjected to the jurisdiction of where they come from when it comes to citizenship? Or should they have some kind of rights here just because they're on the land, United States?
Well, let me back up. I think when we look at the original text of the 14th Amendment says all persons born here is an American citizen. All persons, that's how it starts out, is born here in the United States. And then it goes on to say, and naturalized citizens are here as citizens. Now, when you bring up the question of jurisdiction, I think it's quite obvious that once you come on this land, you're in the jurisdiction of the laws within this land. If that wasn't the case, how could you even identify someone as illegal? Illegal. To call someone illegal is to say you have jurisdiction over them and say your laws are what it is. So once they're in this country, you have jurisdiction over them.
I wouldn't say that.
So if the jurisdiction is unclear, given the laws, if an illegal person commits crime here, they will get arrested. They will go through our court system. That is establishing jurisdiction over them.
So when you're talking about crime and citizenship, that's two totally different things. So when you talk about rights, right? Rights is not the same as jurisdiction over someone when they commit a crime. When someone is somewhere illegally, they don't have the same rights. Matter of fact, if you go and you were to visit another country outside of the United States of America with your passport from the United States of America, you don't have the same rights as this country that you visit.
But you're subject to their laws, though.
You're subject to you under their jurisdiction at the time that you're there. Yes.
So it's established.
No, but listen.
Unless you're a diplomat. Once you're a diplomat, you're subject to the laws within the country you come from. That's the separation. Even within the 14th Amendment, it's written in there.
Being subject to someone's laws.
Subject to the jurisdiction thereof. I think that's important language there. Thereof.
No. So when they're saying thereof, they're not talking about whether thereof the United States. It's saying you're subject to the jurisdiction thereof where you come from. It's what it's the interpretation is.
As
actually.
a diplomat. Because in the language,
No.
they establish diplomatic
No.
status.
That's exactly.
They don't say illegal status. They don't say that anywhere in the Constitution.
Arguments on both sides could go either way, but the fact the Supreme Court has agreed to hear it, I don't think is a good sign for those in favor of birthright citizenship, regardless of your status or the status of your parents. And what this could mean is that going forward, people that come here and have a child, that child doesn't just automatically become a citizen.
So it shows that people who are in favor of birthright citizenship may be in some real trouble here, because the fact that the Supreme Court was willing to see this case means a whole lot. Usually Supreme Court denies a lot of cases where people may think that the law is clear. It never gets to the Supreme Court. So since we're not seeing that here, we're seeing that it actually made it to the Supreme Court. And we don't know, it could be some biases there why it made it to the Supreme Court, but we don't know that. But the fact is that it's there now. And there is something there to show that there's something to be interpreted. And that's the Supreme Court's job, to go in there and interpret the law and to rule.
I do agree with you that there is some concern that this is even going to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court has demonstrated that precedent doesn't matter and established law doesn't matter, given the Dobbs decision and some other rulings that they've made in Trump's favor.
It's not an established law. It's made to be interpreted, and the reason why it's made to be interpreted is because of the way it was written. And also on top of that, the fact that Supreme Court is seeing it is all within the law. One thing I must say is that America was a better country for both white and black people when we were living probably in the 50s or the 60s and 40s and 30s. It's a better country for black people and white people. And if that's what MAGA want to go back to, I might be all for it.
All right, cool. We can end on that note. Well, there it is. Tell us what you think in the comments, and also like and subscribe.
God damn!